Hi guys, it's Miss O'Hare. I've been grading over the 8L 5.1 graphic organizer and realized there are a lot of points of confusion. So I'm going to try and give you just a real quick overview of photosynthesis and cellular respiration and hopefully help answer any questions that you may have. So I'm going to start off by just generally talking about energy. And if you remember from our discussion of food chains, food webs, that all energy on Earth comes from the sun. So here I'm going to draw my little sunshine. All right. And as the sun is shining down on Earth, we have trees and, flowers and grass and all sorts of stuff that the sun is shining on, and transferring that energy from the sun to the plants, right? So this is the sun, this is the sun's energy, and then these are the plants. All right, so if I could zoom way into any of these plants, I would see the plant cells. So let's zoom in, and we're going to see these little boxy shapes that are the plant cells. They're not perfect squares or perfect rectangles, but they're generally typically kind of boxy, and those are the plant cells. Now, inside of these plant cells are something special. They have a special organelle. Ooh, 7th grade review there. They have a special organelle called the chloroplast. All right, so these are plant cells. And this is where we zoomed in. All right, so inside of the plant cells, there are going to be these little organelles, maybe one, maybe 10, however many you want to put in each plant cell, and those are the chloroplasts. All right, so the chloroplast has a pretty special job. It's where photosynthesis happens. And photosynthesis is the process in which energy from the sun gets turned into usable chemical energy that plants and animals and any other thing on Earth can actually use. So this whole process of photosynthesis we can represent using a chemical equation. Chemistry review. Oh boy, I know you're so excited to hear that. So for photosynthesis, right? We have some things that have to happen. So inside the chloroplast, the plant is going to bring in a couple of things. It's going to bring in some carbon dioxide, CO2. And it's going to bring in some water, H2O. Right? And then it's going to add in that sunlight. Now the sun energy, the photons from the sun, that is not actually an element on the periodic table, so we don't represent that in our chemical equation. So I'm going to change colors here. So this is our photosynthesis chemical equation. And if you remember way back to our chemistry unit, remember the things that you start with in a chemical equation are called your reactants. So the CO2 and the H2O, and even you could include the sun's energy in that, even though it's not based on the periodic table. Those are your reactants, because those are your things that are reacting together in the reaction. All right. So through the process of photosynthesis, voila, the chloroplast in the plant turns this good stuff into C6H12O6, otherwise known as glucose, otherwise known as sugar. Right? And then there's another little product over there. It's kind of a waste product. You might be thinking, wow, it doesn't really seem like waste to me. But the other thing that's produced is O2. All right, which is just oxygen. Now, if you also remember back to our chemistry unit, the things that are produced at the end of a chemical reaction are known as your products. So the whole entire thing altogether is the chemical equation. The part at the beginning, those are your reactants. The part at the end are your products, right? So we've got plants turning energy from the sun into usable chemical energy in the form of glucose. So photosynthesis is special, right? Because without photosynthesis, there would be no animals. We wouldn't be able to use that energy from the sun to do anything, right? So the special thing about this is where we find our usable chemical energy. And now that usable chemical energy is actually stored inside of the glucose. Those of you who watched the crash course videos saw that the usable chemical energy stored inside of glucose is also called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And that's actually inside of the glucose, which you go through other cycles to break that out, but you don't need to know that until like biochemistry in college. You might need to know a little bit for biology in high school. All right, so photosynthesis is happening in plants, in the plant cell, in the chloroplast. But the big thing for plants or animals or anything, right, we need to be able to use this energy. We need to be able to use the glucose. So all of us, all living things, use this process. I shouldn't say all living things, but all plants and animals are what we would consider as higher order living things, use a process called cellular respiration. And cellular respiration is sometimes confused with respiration, or sometimes just listed as respiration. You think of respiration as breathing. Respiration, right? Well, we're breathing to get in that oxygen because we need the oxygen to help us break down the glucose. So in cellular respiration, we're basically just doing the reverse of photosynthesis. So we're going to breathe. Our body's going to pull in that oxygen from our surroundings, carry it through our blood, and take it to our cells. Well, we're also eating food, and as we're eating food, we're eating glucose, but we're also eating fructose and sucrose and complex carbohydrates and all these other things, fats, lipids, that our body breaks down trying to get it to that C6H12O6 so that our cells can process it. So the O2, which comes in through our lungs, the C6H12O6 that we get from our food, these things get carried to our cells by our blood, and we're going to have a special chemical reaction that happens inside of our mitochondria. You may remember from 7th grade, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Yeah, it's basically your power plant. It's where you take this energy and turn it into something you can use. So in our energy resources unit, we talked about how you can have sun energy or nuclear energy. That's all well and good, but you can't take a lump of coal and be like, power my TV, magical lump of coal, right? It has to go through a process. It has to be transformed. So the mitochondria in our cells, in all cells, is where we're transforming, the magical mitochondria. where we're transforming this glucose, right? We're extracting that ATP, that usable chemical energy, and as we get out the usable chemical energy, we have some you could kind of consider them waste products, some things that we're left with in the cell. And those products are carbon dioxide and water. Right? So, hopefully you notice that our equations are the exact opposite, right? So photosynthesis starts with carbon dioxide and water. Cellular respiration ends with carbon dioxide and water. So in cellular respiration, carbon dioxide and water are the products. They are what are produced at the end. Oxygen and glucose are the reactants. They are the things that are reacting in the mitochondria. So some of the complicated parts here, right? Plants have both chloroplasts and mitochondria. They're doing both. Animals, sorry guys, we don't have chloroplasts. We only have the mitochondria, so we have to eat to get our glucose. We can't make our own. Plants, they make their own, store it until they need it, and then their mitochondria breaks it down and turns it into energy that they can use. So let's take a look back at our graphic organizer. So we talked about the purpose of photosynthesis is to transform energy from the sun into energy that we can use, into an energy that can be passed on and stored for later use and things like that, called glucose. Cellular respiration, the purpose is to take that glucose and turn it into the usable chemical energy, the ATP, that all of our cells can use. Location in the cell, here's where I'm talking about the organelles. So photosynthesis is happening in the chloroplast, cellular respiration is happening in the mitochondria. The source of energy, well, photosynthesis gets energy from the sun, cellular respiration gets energy from the glucose, the ATP, is what comes out. Reactants, remember that's what you start your chemical equation with. Those are the things that are reacting together. So in photosynthesis, our reactants are the water and the carbon dioxide. Cellular respiration, it's the glucose and the oxygen. And then products, those are the things that we're ending up with, the things we have at the end of the equation, the end of the chemical reaction. So photosynthesis, we end up with glucose and oxygen. Cellular respiration, we end up with carbon dioxide and water. And then the chemical equation, that's where you put it all together. You have your reactants, yields, the arrow, and then your products. So for photosynthesis, you would have your CO2 plus H2O yields C6H12O6 plus O2. Cellular respiration, it's just going to be the opposite. C6H12O6 plus O2 yields CO2 plus H2O. Now, granted, guys, that is not a balanced equation. I know when we were talking about chemistry, we talked about the importance of the law of conservation of mass and having these equations balanced. If you really want to go through and balance your equation and put your coefficients out there, you are more than welcome to do so. Just for the sake of time, I'm just going to stop here. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or leave comments on Google Classroom. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.